Recording in progress. You're given could possibly mean anything. Okay, so that's Birkat Kohanim, and that's it for now. And I apologize again for coming on so late. I had a meeting with Rabbi Cass, and then when I tried to get on, the computer wasn't obeying my commands. Okay, so you should have a good week, and try to go to your Birkat Kohanim. It's such a huge school. It's a school for everything that's important. And realize also, especially if you have bad dreams, if you have a bad dream, which would mean for our purposes any dream that you interpret as bad that left you frightened, then here one of the major schools is going to Birkat Kohanim, and Hashem could turn things around from bad to good. So that's it for now. Thank you, Rebbe Tim.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was so meaningful.
Wow. And welcome, Rebbe Tim Silver.
Okay, everybody.
Represent, I am actually
recording stopped.
You what?
I'm in Yamamel, so I'm recording you, and Bezras Hashem to work.
Okay. It doesn't look
recording in progress.
Okay. Thank you, Gitzi, for the lovely gift. I didn't get a chance to speak to you. I'm a little bit under the weather. Getting better.
I hear.
Yeah.
Before Shalem.
Amen. It's getting better, but I was mamash out of commission for the last few days. So this is the first time I'm able to even speak. Forgive me if I cough. Forgive me for all of the interruptions. Okay. Let's see what announcements we have to make. Announcements for those people who are in Chutz La'aretz is put up your volume. Number one, I can't talk loud. I'll try to be close to the devices. It's a beautiful day here in Yerushalayim Kodesh. We've had beautiful weather. It's very, very unusual to have such beautiful weather. Okay, because it's right. Even though officially winter is over after Tu B'Shvat, officially winter is over, but we usually get snow in February. Doesn't look like, what's the date in February now? I don't even know. 11. We don't usually it doesn't look like we're going to get snow, but you never know. The world could turn around. The world could turn around in 1 second. L'tova, we hope it'll turn around for the good, for that which we perceive as good. This whole Parsha, we're learning Parshas Mishpatim, and the interesting thing is, I remember, every year I say this, I remember when I was, I think, in 6th grade. I think it was in 6th grade, and we learned Parshas Mishpatim, and it was so hard. I don't know why they decided to teach, and I went to a modern Orthodox elementary school. Why in the world did they decide to teach Mishpatim to 6th graders? I don't remember anything other than it was very hard. I don't remember feeling like turned off or anything, but I remember it was so complicated. And, I would have much rather learned the stories in Tanakh, in Chumash. But they gave us that 1 year where we learned Parshas Mishpatim. And you know what? The stuff that you learn when you're a kid, you remember it your whole life. So here we are. You know that there's a custom also by certain Chadarim to teach, to start when kids learn Chumash, the first pasuk they teach them is Vayikra. The first pasuk in Vayikra. And that's also for first graders or for little kids. That's so, the whole book of Vayikra is so not in the world that they're living in, but that's what they teach first for many different reasons. And so lo and behold, all these years later, when we learn Parshas Mishpatim, we learn, first of all, the Pshat. Let's say the Pshat. This Parsha has the most mitzvot in it. The whole Parsha, except for the very end, the whole Parsha is all laws, laws, laws. And not obscure, wrong word. Not even spiritual laws. You wouldn't consider them spiritual. The beginning talks about how to work with servants and how to work with thieves and how to work with wild animals. These are not exactly the most spiritual concepts, and the most spiritual situations. And so all the Mefarshim and the Pashtanim, the Mefarshim, the commentaries that focus on the Pshat, on the simple direct meaning of the pasuk, they talk about how, last Parshas Yisro, and Parshat Yitro, and there was the whole, the giving of the 10 Commandments, and the Ma'amad Har Sinai, the most remarkable experience that humanity as a group had of the receiving of God coming down on Har Sinai and Mount Sinai, giving millions and millions of people prophecy for those few, for that short amount of time, that everyone heard God, they felt God, they experienced God. We, not they, we. Our souls were there. There are some who say even our bodies were there. And after that incredible experience, which really no one could even articulate what that felt like for the people who experienced it on whatever level they could communicate. No one could communicate what that experience was like. And the week after the Parsha, right, and so when it says the week after in our time is the Parsha, next Parsha, but immediately after Har Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu begins to teach us all the details, all the laws. So the Mefarshim say the Vav, the Ve'ela, and these are the laws that you'll teach, that you'll put before them. And these, the word and is connecting to the whole previous Parsha of that incredible experience of the receiving of the Torah. And that experience was prophetic. Prophetic means all of us reached levels. All of us reached levels of awareness of God that almost, not completely, but almost to Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Only Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the 13 principles of our belief is that Moshe Rabbeinu was the highest of all prophets, and no one had a clarity like Moshe Rabbeinu. But we were in that neighborhood. And could you imagine? It's like every year I say this, but it's a good thing that you don't remember from year to year this year. So could you imagine Motzei Yom Kippur, if after you've gone through the whole day of Yom Kippur, the whole purification process that takes place in those 25 hours of Yom Kippur, we're going through stages and stages of purification and elevation and forgiveness, and all of the negativity is layer by layer, like onion layers taken off of us. Another layer of difficulty, another layer of impurity, another layer of confusion. All day long on Yom Kippur, layers and layers are taken off of us of negativity. And if you're in shul and you're doing the tefillah with the tzibur, you're doing the prayer with the congregation, you actually feel this. So that as soon as when Yom Kippur is over, could you imagine? Somebody comes over to you, Motzei Yom Kippur, with a cup of coffee, okay, to give you bring you back to this physical world. Then says to you, by the way, you want to make a bank robbery with me? I have a car waiting outside. Let's go rob a bank. There's nobody there right now. You would look at them like they're from a different planet. Like, what are you, crazy? I just went through Yom Kippur. I'm an angel right now. Or come, let's go beat up that kid over there who was disturbing during the davening. Let's go beat him up. Are you crazy? I'm on the highest level. I'm like an angel. So too the Jewish people when we heard the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments. When we heard that, when we didn't just hear it, we felt it, we experienced it. And now you're telling me that I'm going to have a servant girl, and I'm going to have slaves, and I might steal, and I might have to sell myself into slavery because I can't pay back what I stole, and I'm going to have animals, and I'm not going to watch over them, and they're going to trample and kill people, and I'm going to dig things in a field, and people are going to fall in, or animals are going to fall in, or I'm going to want to kill somebody, and there's a pregnant lady right next door, right next to me, and I, by accident, in the violence, I hit her, and she has miscarriage. Like, what kind of crazy stories are you telling me? So the Vav of Ve'ela HaMishpatim is telling us, Hashem is saying, my children, that's the state of humanity, is you have the highest and the most sublime, then you have the lowest and the most unsublime. And that could happen in a person's life. And we shouldn't feel like we're failures. And in a second we'll explain why we shouldn't feel like we're failures. But that's the first lesson, is that Hashem is telling you that the way He created us is a body and a soul. The soul, let's start with the soul. The soul is sublime and wants only great things. And the body is pulling you down to the most ridiculous, unnecessary, destructive sometimes. And that's how Hashem made the world. That's the Pashtan, the Pshat. Asher tasim lifnehem, that you should place before them. All the commentaries say, why doesn't it say, why didn't Hashem say, and you should teach them? What does it mean to place? These are the judgments, these are the laws that you should place before them. What does that mean? You have to teach them, not put it in front of them. If you put it in front of them, they might not open the book. What does it mean? And so the commentaries say that the job that God gave to the Rabbanim, to His assistants, to the Rabbanim, to the rabbis, and to the judges, is to make the law so clear to us that it's as if we're by a smorgasbord. We're by a wedding, we're by an event, and there's a smorgasbord, and you see everything is in front of you. Or sometimes what I do when I have Balei Tshuva in the house for Shabbos, and they're experiencing a Shabbos meal for the first time. So I tell them the menu, because once, years and years and years ago, I had such a funny story. Before I used to tell my menu, what's upcoming in the meal, like sometimes they put a menu on the table, a fancy French menu of, so I tell them why, because once, years and years ago, I had a girl at the Shabbos table. It was a Friday night. And I eat Israeli now. So the first course is salatim, dips and vegetables, and then you bring out a little fish, and this girl, she was enjoying, and she was eating and eating and eating. And then I brought out the soup, and she said, wow, that's interesting. You have soup for dessert? Like after the meal, you bring out soup? And I said to her, honey, that was just the appetizer. And then we brought out the main, and she couldn't believe it. She said she never saw so much food in her life. What kind of meal is this? She had no idea what's a Shabbos meal like, and then it schleps out for hours. And so since then, whenever I have real beginners at my table, I always say, by the way, let me just tell you what's coming up, so you should know to pace yourself. So asher tasim lifnehem, you have to set the table in such a way that the Jewish people know all the things that are upcoming. They know the rules, they know the laws, They know the result, the consequences. Make halacha so clear to the Jewish people that they don't trip up. It's like you're giving them the menu of what is and what's going to be. And you should know that for women, what are our special halachas that we have to learn? So you don't have to learn necessarily the laws of Choshen Mishpat. You don't have to learn the laws of monetary things, because you know that if you have a shayla, you have a question halacha, you'll ask a rav. But what do you have to know? Every minute you have to know the laws of how to speak, Shmirat HaLashon. You have to know all the laws of bracha, which blessings you make on food. You have to know all the laws for women who are married, they have to know all the laws of marriage. You have to know all the laws in the kitchen, all the laws because these are the things that we're involved in. Of course, you have to know property laws, because we're involved in the world right now also. Are you allowed to take a pencil from your boss and use it at home? Are you allowed to make a phone call while you're still, you're still working? Can you make a personal phone call? You have to know those laws also, but for a woman, we have to be experts in the laws of what we're involved in the most, which is talking. Right? It says, the Talmud says, and the Medrash says, that God made 10 levels of speech in the world, and women took 9. And by the way, this is not just Jewish women, all women. And so, just like it says, God made 10 levels of beauty in the world, and Yerushalayim HaKodesh took 9. So we have to know the laws of speech. Are you allowed to say what you're about to say? Are you even allowed to think what you're thinking? Are you even allowed to assume what you're assuming? The answer is probably not. So you have to know those laws. You have to know the laws of what else are we doing all day. We're in the kitchen. We're eating. We're cooking. Right? So you have to know all those laws. You have to be perfect in them. And women have to learn the laws of midot. Midot means character traits. We have to learn the laws of jealousy. Orchos tzadikim shar hakina. We have to learn those laws of jealousy. And the laws of jealousy are really just a form of emunah and bitachon, trusting in God, believing in God and trusting in God. We have to learn the laws of simcha, because women have a tendency to be weak in these two areas of jealousy and happiness. We have to know the laws of happiness, of simcha. It's also connected to emunah and bitachon. We have to be experts in these laws. Of course, we have to be experts in the laws of Shabbos, right? You have to know on Shabbos what you're allowed to do. So there's so much that we have to be experts in. And we also have to learn through Tanakh. You could do the daily Nach. I think it's starting again. There's a new series starting maybe today or tomorrow in Nach, starting Sefer Yeshua. You could learn a parak a day in 20 minutes. I'm telling you, we have no time to do anything. I remember once speaking to a Chabadnik, a Chabad woman, and she said that, we were talking in a group, and one person said, "Is it true that Chabad starts davening at 10 o'clock in the morning, Shacharis?" And one of the ladies, actually it was a group of my students, one of the girls, her father is a shaliach someplace. She said, my father davens early in the morning. He gets up early in the morning. He doesn't wait till 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is a shir. But okay, here in Har Nof, the Chabad shul starts at 9:30. There's first a shir, and then there's a davening. But you know how much Chabad has homework every single day? To do chitas, means the Chumash and the Tehillim and the Tanya. And then to do Rambam. There's a Rambam, I think they're finishing the 3 years tomorrow. There's another cycle of Rambam finishing tomorrow. There's so much to do all day long. We don't have really time to fool around. Anyway, that's Asher Tasim Lifnehem. So these are the pshat. That's the pshat. But the Pri Tzadik, which we're trying very hard to go through a little bit this year, the Pri Tzadik. So he brings a medrash, and a very, very surprising medrash that says that, and he brings a Zohar actually, that says that the Zohar says, where did I put it? These mishpatim, the rules, the fairness, because the mishpat is something that's fair. mishpat is fairness, even though, and then in the time in Patach Eliyahu, it says that mishpat is rachamim, judgment is compassion. Now, how could that be? Judgment has to be fair. Is mishpat, is a shofet, is a judge. It has to be based on rules. There's no, in Jewish law, there's no plea bargaining, or there's no, okay, whatever. You're my kid. I'll get you off the hook. God is, the Gemara says that anybody who thinks that God is a vatran, that God, is like your pal, and because he's your pal, you don't have to be so worried about the judgment, is a fool. So mishpat means judgment. On the other hand, in Kabbalah, Patach Eliyahu Navi teaches us that judgment is rachamim. So how could that be? So the Zohar Rabbi Shimon explains. He says, from this week's Parsha, Ve'eva Mishpatim, he says, that this is the entire teaching. This is where the Zohar begins to teach us about Gilgulim. Gilgul Neshama. What is Gilgul Neshama? Means reincarnation. And he explains this idea of Gilgul Neshama. And he says, don't think that you're hopeless. Don't think that you're hopeless. Hashem is going to make sure that your neshama, that your soul has its fixing, has its tikkun, has its repair. So what happens? Let's say at a certain time in your life you did something, and there's no way that you can somehow get rectification for that deed, whatever it is. You said lashon hara about somebody, and then the person died. There are so many things or you said lashon hara and you don't have the moral strength to reveal it and to apologize, or something like that. There's so many deeds that we can't, or we did something we don't even know that we did. How can you do tshuva? We can say Hashem Bagadnu every single day, but sometimes you have to do tshuva something particular. Like in our parsha, it's a lot of monetary laws of if you stole something, and if it was broken, how much you have to pay back. If you stole an animal and you killed it, how much you have to pay back. If you stole an ox, or if you stole a sheep, how much you have to pay back. If you were killed in the middle of stealing, does the killer have to pay you back? There's so many laws, monetary laws, and we don't even know them. So how in the world are we going to repair this? So Rabbi Shimon says, Hashem brings you back in another Gilgul. He brings you back in another lifetime. And in that lifetime, somebody steals from you. And that was the person that you stole from in a previous life. And Hashem makes sure that you pay back the debt that you incurred. And that's how Hashem evens the scales. So here we get stolen from in this lifetime. And we get so annoyed and we get so aggravated and we can't bring them to court because there's no proof, and because a million different reasons, I don't know. And you feel disappointed and you feel like it's not fair. And Hashem says to you, honey, that was the most fair thing that you ever experienced in your life, because I just evened the scales. I just made sure that you don't have to suffer in the next world. I just made sure that stain on your soul got removed. And that's why the Parsha Mishpatim of Judgements is so full of hope. And you say to yourself, like, how could it be that I'm in such a situation that seems so far from Judaism and far from holiness? Ad kedei kach, to the point where it says, if a person stole, now listen, if you stole, one of the things that I say again every year, because it's such an important thing, there's so the judicial system of the world is so foolish. Anytime, let's say, for example, and now it's starting a little bit to wake up. The businessmen of the world are a little bit starting to wake up. So let's say you have a kid who's a hacker. I must have said this year, the same exact year last year. this parsha, because I had such a student. I had such a student who was a hacker. How did I know? I'm very interested in computers, and okay, now I don't really have too much time to be interested in them. But when computers first came out and the internet became really available, I was very, very fascinated. Like, how could this be? What is this? How does this? How is it that? And now with AI, how is that every time, when you ask a question to AI, you're adding to the information of AI just by asking a question. How do I make cookies with the tchina? So now you added information to AI because AI is not going to search through all the information of the world. They can do it in a second. How long does the AI take to respond? 5 seconds. And they can find you a cookie recipe with tahina. But you've also added information to AI that you like cookies with tahina. So you know that one of my friends told me a scary thing. She said she likes AI very much, and she said that AI knows so much about you I think maybe if you pay for AI. I don't pay for AI. I don't pay for anything. There's computers. Sorry. Excuse me. I'm getting better, Baruch Hashem. I just got a cold. I slept in a very, very cold place last week, and my Chinese my acupuncturist, who's my primary Baruch Hashem doctor, he explained to me that in Chinese medicine, especially for a person like me, I'm very sensitive to cold, so my whole body shifted into a cold mode. Anyway, that's like this. Anyway, so I'm getting better, Baruch Hashem. Thank you. She said that she pays for AI because she needs it for work. This friend of mine, and she said that AI it keeps in its memory in her accounts all the things that she ever put into AI, all the questions she's asked, and all that. And so she once asked AI, "What do you think I look like? How old do you think I am? And what profession do you think I am?" And it answered her correctly. How scary is that? I didn't try it because I don't have paid AI, and I don't ask it questions like that. I ask it recipes and sometimes translations, like big translations. But I was very, very fascinated by all this. So anyway, one day in class at Neve, I just threw out a question. I said, "Is anybody here a hacker?" Now I didn't understand the word. Like, I didn't understand the negative consequences of that word. I meant, is anybody like an expert in computers? But one of the girls in the back, she got pale and she started shaking. And I said, "Are you okay?" She said, yeah, I'll talk to you afterwards. And it turns out that she was a real hacker. Listen to this amazing story. She said to me that when she was about 13 years old, she didn't come from she was a Jewish girl, but she didn't come from a religious background at all. And she was living, her parents were very poor. And they lived in some kind of a place in, I don't know, Idaho, or I don't know, I'm apologizing to the people from Idaho. I was from New York originally, so I don't know anything about the Midwest, but in a neighborhood where there were no Jews and no, not a lot of people around. And she lived with her parents, she and her brother. They did not have a lot of money, but her parents actually purchased for them a computer. And there was a certain winter, I think she said, that they couldn't go to school because it was crazy weather. They couldn't get out of the house. And so she and her brother, who had no toys, but they had this computer, they began to play on the computer and learn computer language. And they figured out the structure of the computer. Now, she was 12 years old, clearly very smart. And you know what? I had lost touch with her, but if you hear this year and it's you, please get back to me. I haven't spoken to you in a lot of years. Anyway, so she came and she said to me this whole story. She said that she and her brother they just figured out the language of computers, and they learned it on the YouTube. They learned coding. I don't even think they had the word coding then. They had programming, that word. Whatever it is, she and her brother became computer experts, but they were like 12 and 13 years old, sitting in their farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. And she said that they were able to break into the bank on their computer. Now, they didn't steal anything, but they were like, wow. They broke into their high school or their elementary, whatever school they were in. They were able to break into the records of that school. They were able to do all these things. They didn't do anything criminal, but they just were able to break the codes of these different. She said it was like in a movie. One day, a black car pulled up in front of their house, and two guys got out of the car in black suits. They knocked on the door, and her mother opened the door. She said, yes. They said, can we come in? And they showed a badge from the CIA or FBI or whatever. And they began quite. Now, the mother was dressed in they were very simple people. And the FBI agent was questioning them and said, do you have a computer in the house? And the mother said, yeah, the kids have a computer upstairs. It wasn't even a laptop. It was an old-fashioned computer. And the FBI agent understood, and he said, call your kids down. And the kids came down, and they right away, she said, as soon as they came down the steps, she said they knew right away what this was. And the FBI agent looked at them, and he understood that they understood. And he sat down with them. They began talking, and he explained to them, they just told him the story that they have nothing to do, and they figured out computers, and they were able to. It was exciting for them. They didn't steal anything. They didn't change anything. It was exciting for them to be able to see, all of these things on their computer. Anyway, the FBI agent took the computer out of the house, and he gave them a warning. He said, you're not allowed to get, we know your, I don't know how they can sell such a thing, but we know your number, or we know we're following you, whatever, and you're not allowed to get in your computer for 5 years. They were not allowed to touch a computer for 5 years. Now, when I met her, she was already past that 5 years. But when I said hacker, she got terrified. Like, does that mean that they know about me and they're going to kick me out of Neve? And, So I said to her, no, I'm just so fascinated by computers. Explain to me everything that you can. And she sat down with me. She tried to explain to me different concepts and, how, where is this information stored and et cetera, et cetera. So, how I got to this, I don't remember how I got to this story, but we're going back to Mishpatim. So in Mishpatim, the laws of Mishpatim are so detail-oriented. You should know that a computer is also very detail-oriented. Even though every computer in the world knows everything, but if you write gmail.com, if you don't write that dot in the Gmail, forget that little dot, the period, it won't send you your email. Why not? You contain all the information in the world. You know that gmail.com is supposed to be gmail.com. You understand that I forgot to put the period in, the nikuda in. Why can't you correct that yourself? Computers have well, I don't know now, maybe it's not true, but in olden days, computers were very, very detail-oriented. Okay, so number one, Gilgulin, that the most spiritual concept of reincarnations is based on the most practical parsha in the Torah. This is the source of Gemara Bava Basha Bava Kama Bava Messiah Bava Kama. This parsha that we're in, all the psukim are so analyzed, and Moshe Rabbeinu showed how every single halacha was based on every single letter in each of these psukim. Everything these gemaras, the nezikim, that's all about this week's parsha. And yet the neshamas of the neshamas, the concept of a neshama, the concept of a soul, which is the most practical concept. A soul is not a physical thing at all. What's a soul? We can't see souls. We can't touch souls. We can't feel souls. Maybe you say you could feel your soul. Okay, that's maybe a little bit exaggerated, but maybe you can feel your soul. But the concept of soul and the concept of body, that's what Hashem does to us in this week's Parsha. And therefore, this week's Parsha is this week is at the same time the most sublime and the most physical. Here it tells us that Aaron Onan, he explains, for example, the Rebbe here explains, Hashem rachem al nafshot Yisrael, shelo yidach mimenu nidach. Rabbi Nachman quotes this pasuk over and over again. Hashem has such mercy on us that He makes sure that none of us lose out. None of us are eternally pushed away. Kedita b'sama, like it says in the Zohar that Hashem Yisrach Misavev Nishmatin, she's kind of called, everything is fixed. Like, for example, Aaron Onan. Remember Aaron Onan? Remember that story of Tamar and Yehuda, right? So that's where Mashiach comes from. So Aaron Onan were the Bechor and the second son of Yehuda from his first wife. And they married Tamar, who was a big tzadikah. She was direct descendant from Shem. She was a big tzadikah. She was a princess. She knew that she was going to bring redemption to the world. And when she married into the family of Yehuda, she understood that Yehuda, who's the king, has to be the tribe of the kings is coming from her. So what happened? So Aaron Onan, that was their first Gilgal, and they couldn't live up to the standard that Hashem had for them. And they didn't give her children. And they died. And then they were reincarnated into Machlon and Chilion. Who was Machlon and Chilion? That was the wife. That was the husband of Ruth and Orpah, right? So Machlon was the husband of Ruth, the mother of kingship. And then he also died. Then he came back into then Boaz, who was the Redeemer, who was the Goel Boaz came, and he redeemed the soul of Machlon, and he became Oved, his son that he had from Ruth, right? Sof ha'puranut nepach la'acharit v'tikva she'atsa David misham. In the end of all these hard stories, difficult stories of failure after failure, right? Aaron Onan, and then Machlon and Chilion. These are neshamas that came down. And Chilion, Nebuch, means destruction. And that was the husband of Orpah. And Orpah, as you know, was the mother of Goliath. And Goliath indeed was destroyed. And yet somehow from that whole story came David Melech. That's what the pasuk says. Ki anochi yadati et hamachshavot asher anochi choshev alechem. Only Hashem knows the thoughts that He has about us. Only Hashem knows. Nobody else can understand Hashem. Nobody can understand Hashem and why things happen. And that's why Rabbi Nachman, our teacher, Rabbi Nachman says, when something happens to you that you don't like, sing and dance. One of my students from Ezra Academy, a big tzaddik, who married another of my students from Ezra Academy, a big tzaddikah. So I had to send him a message. Why did I send him a message? I forgot. Maybe he sent me a message and I said, I can't respond. I'm not feeling well. And he said, what's wrong? And I said, I got a cold and it's making me I have a sinus condition, whatever. I'm a big mess. He said, okay, are you a real wrestler? Sing and dance. Get up. I said, I can't get out of bed. He said, sing and dance. That's what a real wrestler does when things happen to them. Why? Because he's supposed to say, Hashem just made a tikkun in my life. I have no idea what this is accomplishing. And just like on Yom Kippur, as the day progresses, layers and layers are lifted off of us. So too, when we go through stuff that's not comfortable, layers and layers are lifted off of us. Or other things are happening that we really don't even know about. Maybe we're giving merit to somebody who's in our soul family. We don't know what's happening, and we don't even have to know, and that's fine. At the very, very end of this parsha is a very famous declaration of Na'aseh v'nishma. Remember that declaration, Na'aseh v'nishma, that the angels said, how did the Jewish people know that? And Hashem said, because that's the neshama that I created, called the Jewish people. You would think that Na'aseh v'nishma is at the last parsha of Yisro, written before we received the Ten Commandments, when Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, go ask them and go check with them, right? Because all the nations of the world, Hashem offered the Torah to all the nations of the world, the Medrash says, and each one said no. They didn't say no some. They said, we can't do that in Torah because it goes against the essence of our creation, right? It says that, and then Esav said, what is it written in Torah? Hashem says, don't kill. Esav says, how could you tell me to keep the Torah, to accept the Torah that says don't kill? When you created me on blood, you created me a killer. So it goes against my nature. And Yishmael said, Hashem came to Yishmael and said, you want to keep the you want to receive the Torah. The Jewish people are receiving the Torah. You want to receive the Torah. And Yishmael said, what does it say? What's in it? And Hashem says, don't steal. And Esav says, but you wrote about me in your Torah that his hand is in everybody's pocket. How can I take the Torah if it goes against my nature? And then Hashem came to the Jewish people and said, you want to receive the Torah? And the Jewish people said, yeah, Na'aseh v'nishma. We didn't ask what's in it. We just said Na'aseh v'nishma. We'll take it. If it's from you, we'll take it, because if you're offering it to us, we know that we can do it. And that was supposed to be what Esav said. And Yishmael said, because each of them had a chelek. Esav even more than Yishmael. Yishmael's only a half sibling. Esav was a full sibling to us. They should have said, yes, I know it might be hard, but I'll be able to do it because you're offering it to me. They didn't. Instead, we said yes. Now the joke is, I think I heard this maybe from Rabbi Fishel Schachter, maybe, I'm not sure. But he's the one who tells all the jokes. So he said that the Jewish people, if the Medrash is in the way that the Medrash is written, the Jewish people should have also said what's written in the Torah. Because if the Medrash is structured in such a way, it's structured in such a way that they all said what's written, and then Hashem says what's written, and then they say no, it should have said, the Jewish people asked what's written in the Torah, and then Hashem should have told us a really hard mitzvah for us, and we should have said Af al pi chen, yes. So he says, yeah, Hashem did do that, because Hashem said, everybody you say in this place, when Hashem lined us up for the receiving of the Torah, Hashem told everybody where to stand. This is your place, this is your place, this is your place. And that's very hard for a Jew, because we want to be in that place, right? You want to be over there, where that person is. You want to do what he's doing. You want to do what she's doing. And Hashem said, no. You have to do what you're doing. You have to do what your neshama is supposed to do. Agreed? And we said, okay, agreed. So that was the joke that he said. But this week's Parsha, we say Na'aseh v'nishma, meaning I'm going to do it no matter how hard it is. I'm accepting upon myself. So this week's Parsha is also just like last week's Parsha when you were in shul and you accepted the Torah. This week's Parsha, when you're in shul, you're going to also accept the Torah, especially when they says when the Baal Koreh is reading Na'aseh v'nishma at the very end, it's the last section. You're going to say, yes, I accept everything, Hashem, and I love you, and I accept you, and I know that everything that you're doing is for the very, very best. This week is also Parsha Shekalim. Yay, we're entering into the 4 weeks, the 4 special Parshios before Pesach, right? 2 weeks before. We have 2 special readings before Purim, and then 2 special readings before Pesach. What are these? So Shekalim and Parsha Zachor, those are the 2 Parshios before Purim we're going to read. And then HaChodesh and Para, right? It's going to be before Pesach. The Parshas before Purim are to talk about Shekalim. Shekalim was that every single Jew has to give Chatzi Shekel, the Shekel HaKodesh, once a year. We had tax. Whether you were rich or whether you were poor, you gave the same communal tax once a year. If you wanted to give presents, if you wanted to give anything, you could. But once a year, you had a communal tax of half a shekel. Half a shekel, that was, and they counted, that's how we counted how many Jews there were. And that's how everyone had a portion in all of the korbanot and all of the offerings of the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash. That's this week. Next week is Parsha Zachor, where we remember Amalek, and we have to destroy Amalek. Then after that comes Purim. I know, not next week, the week after that's going to come Parsha Zachor. And then Purim is here. And then Pesach is here. And then Sfiras Omer is here. And then Shavuos is here. And then the summer is here. And how crazy is that the whole year flew by in like in a second. Okay, my sweet friends, I'm going to stop the shir now because my like oil tank is, on empty. But Bezrat Hashem will continue next week, and I'm getting better. Thank you for all your good wishes. Thank you for the present. So Gitti, I would Tzadikah Gitti, every year, several times a year, she sends me like a cute little gift, and she sends it in the name of the Wednesday shir. So you all, thank you all, and thank Gitti for being a true a true, faithful leader, not taking credit for anything, doing everything for everyone in a modest way, in a quiet way, and in a Zerizut, she makes sure that this happens. Gitzi fell into this job of running the shir, sort of like by accident, and it was supposed to be temporary. And I think every year she's trying to get somebody else to do this job, and I don't think that's going to happen until Mashiach comes. But we have to thank Gitzi Normal for organizing, for putting together all of the recordings, and for running after people to pay for sponsorships, and for drumming up business for this year. And so on behalf of the whole Wednesday Shir, I'm thanking Gitzi and wishing her long life and health and nachas from all of her children. I just want to tell you something for those people who might need this information. I'll tell you something really interesting that they just put out on the Harnof, not on the Harnof, on a different list that I'm on. The Ribbenzer Rabbi was very connected to him, Chasdei Hashem. And very connected to the Rebbetzin, really. She was a good friend of mine. They're on the highest levels of Gan Eden right now. Anyway, so the story goes, there was a bacher who was not yet married, and he wanted a segula. He wanted to get married, and so he kept asking the Rebbe for permission to buy him a new coat, like a new, the long coat that the Rebbe used to wear. He had a few different coats that he would wear. The outermost one, the silver one that he would wear. So the bacher wanted to buy him a new one, and the Rebbe kept saying no, no, no. And finally he said yes. And he said, what do you want? Because the Rebbe knew he had Ruach HaKodesh on the highest, such a high level. And he said to him, okay, what do you want as a present, as a bracha? And the boy said he wants to get married, and sure enough, he got married. So and then the boy asked the Rebbe, I'm going to give you, a new coat. I forgot how the Rebbe had a special name for that coat. And can I have the old one? So the Rebbe said, not only can you have it, but I'm going to tell you something. In the merit of this mitzvah that you're doing, you take this coat, and any bacher who's having a hard time getting married, tell him to, I forgot already the order, go to the mikveh, say Tehillim, give money, light a candle in my honor, and give some tzedakah. Did I say 4 things? Mikveh, Tehillim, a candle, and tzedakah. I think that was 4 things. And then after that, put on this coat, and it'll be a school of him to get married. So I heard that the coat is for 2 days. It's in Har Nof. So if anybody wants to spread that around, the boy has to. If you need any of the details, I can look it up to see all the details. Mikveh is the first thing that you have to do before you get into it's on Agassi. I think it's Agassi 8, someone's house. I have all the information written down. If anybody needs that information, you can ask me. Okay, ladies, have a wonderful day, and thank you for Australia. Thank you for the shir. Thank you for the safe day. All the brachos, and Bezrat Hashem, all the people that I can't see on YouTube. You should all be blessed and be well. Hi, Rebbetzin Rochel. Hi, Yehudis. Hi, Davina. Hi, Gitzi. Hi, Yansfia. Hi, all the people that are on Zoom that I can't see the names of them. Have a good week, a healthy week, a strong week, a safe week, a blessed week.
Same to you.
Bezrat Hashem. Amen. Amen.